How are you?
I'm good. It's so good to be able to talk about like our origin story. That makes me so
Such a
happy.
good one. It really is.
It is a good one because sometimes, like so the origin story in short is that Jana and I got put together for in a one slot conference talk for Postpartum Support International before the pandemic, and we didn't know each other.
Sight unseen.
Sight unseen.
2019.
2000, yeah.
And so all of a sudden we were like, hi, I guess we're doing this together. And as we talked more, we realized how similar we were in our overall orientation, even if we come at it from a little bit different directions. And our deep passion for the work and lived experience was so strong that I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a friend of mine. Like,
yes,
this is going to be a colleague.
Totally.
How amazing. And we show up at the conference, and it was in Portland that year, and we Oregon, and I was trying to get the lay of the land. I don't know your experience with this, but so I was like, what room are we gonna be in, just to like go in and
where are we presenting? Are we in a room, teeny tiny room? Where are we?
Exactly. And so the registration people were like, oh, you're in the ballroom. And so I was like, oh, well, I mean, you guys are going to collapse the ballroom right into like segments. And they were like, yeah, totally. Which I'm so glad they told me that. So I didn't have time to get nervous. So then the next day we show up for our training and it's the entire ballroom.
There were like 250, 300 people in that room.
Exactly. Which was a huge percentage of the entire conference. And I looked at you and realized, wow, people are really starting to understand the brain and body-based connection with trauma, and they want to learn more, because I was presenting on the angle of brain spotting and you were presenting on the angle of EMDR. And it just, the synergy between us was just so,
it was so good.
That people would still say to me like, oh my God, like I was in that room and I knew that I was going to go get trained by one or both of you. And most of them are by both of us. So that was such an exhilarating experience, and being able to get such helpful tools out to folks who really have the passion for the perinatal community.
They really do. And, and people really want to know what is going to be helpful and what's going to be practical and pragmatic and just work for their clients. And, one of the things that happened right away when you and I started talking for me was that I liked and respected you so quickly that I realized I had to go get trained in brain spotting before this conference, because I really wanted to understand what you were teaching. And it felt really important for us to be able to talk together about, because I knew you had already been trained in EMDR some time before. And so I did. I went and got trained in brain spotting. And I was joking with you, like, that's because of you. That was really, yeah. And I'm so glad I did. It's such a powerful method. And I have found it so helpful in the work. And so, it's one of those things where something unexpected and random happens, and it's like, it's this blessing from above, like, thank you, PSI, for this wonderful introduction.
That's what's so amazing, is that who would have thought, right? But here we are. Just a few years later. And now, like, it's so interesting to me, because one of the things I love about our perinatal community as a whole is that there's so much support for each other.
Yes.
It doesn't feel competitive, because I think from the outside, someone may look and say, wait a minute, how are you guys teaming up under one institute? Like, shouldn't y'all? But then when the core is trying to relieve suffering in any population, but we have an affinity for the perinatal population, because we just see the struggles. We have had our own struggles in our lives that we have overcome through these techniques ourselves as clients.
Yes.
And then being able to just share it with other people, because then you can be with folks who have struggled so much on their road to parenthood, and give them that opportunity to actually enjoy it and to feel really present. And so it's, having all these different tools available that go so far beyond, the traditional talk therapy modalities, which are totally fine for certain issues. But when we get into the trauma realm, to really be able to calm those nervous systems, ground folks, help integrate their experience into their larger sense, it's such a gift. And I know for me, it feels like a miracle every time.
I know every time. I'm excited. I'm like, wow. Every time I do reprocessing with somebody or resourcing with EMDR with somebody, it's magic. Completely. And it's going to be 20 years in January for me.
And that's what's so amazing. I was reading this article saying that the average trauma therapist stays in that niche of the field for 7 years. And I was thinking, wow.
I can understand that if you're not using a neurobiological kind of treatment.
But to be able to triple it each and still be like, I love this work.
And I'm excited because it's so much less exhausting to do the work because it's really the nervous system doing the work.
Yes.
And, just to piggyback on what you were saying about us teaming up, from my perspective, and this is something that I think I've known for a long time, and I really learned it from Debbie Davis, who's my co-author and partner in crime in our in our writing projects. Yes, wonderful and wise. And one of the things that we learned in writing was that people may be doing similar things, but they're going to do it with their own flavor and their own lens and their own way. And so the beauty of this is that, yes, we're teaching different models and modalities, but they're compatible. But also what you're bringing is you and your lens and your experience and your passion for the perinatal work and for brain spotting and the interface. And from my perspective, all that does is add to our training program. I mean, it adds tremendously. And so there are people who want to be trained in both EMDR and brain spotting, and they'll have that opportunity, and we can make sure they have a good experience, which is really what we're aiming for with the training program, is that, we want to really keep everything as smoothly running as possible for people, including our instructors. Because, again, you think about perinatal mental health and just all the barriers that parents hit, we don't want to replicate that with the training experiences. And so often that happens. But yeah, I see what we're doing as just expanding the options and possibilities for all these clinicians, which expands possibilities for families, for parents.
Yeah. And I mean, the Touchstone Institute, there is training, of course, but I'm so excited to continuously see the evolution of it being really the go-to place for family members, for folks suffering themselves, for, adjunct professionals, and of course, for professionals, because we're doing such a good job compiling resources and really having podcasts and articles and book suggestions by area, that it's such a great landing space, for that interface, and continuously building it, that I think the training is so important. But sometimes people just need to be like, I need to reference something. Like I need a workbook. Right.
Exactly. I need a book. I need a podcast. Give me an article, something I can hand to a physician, to a referral source.
Or support what I'm saying, etc. So I just love like the range that's going to be offered, that really just trying to meet all the various needs within the perinatal world. And, how carefully Touchstone is cultivating a culture and really seeking people who have that depth and breadth of knowledge and passion for the field.
Yes. And share our values also,
100%.
We're so focused on, the anti-oppression, reproductive justice, holistic, developmentally supportive, just this very integrative kind of way of working that we also practice amongst our team. And really want to do that. And I'm sure you can remember hearing, me talk about the website getting developed. It's been a few months here. We're sitting here in December of 2022. And we're already talking with our web designer about the next bells and whistles that we want to put in there, just again, for people to easily access materials, easily find each other, whether it's a consultant or whether it's a therapist or referral, people who've been trained with us, and who want to be listed with us, which, we're not monitoring or, we're not responsible for those therapists, but we do have a strong sense that people who want to be listed with us and who've trained with us get it, and get our values. And so it's at least a little bit of a flavor of where some people are coming from. And it's exciting to think actually about some of these groups and conversations that we start to form. I just finished a training this week, and one of the things that people were talking about was wanting, just more opportunity for small group conversation. And, that's kind of what you and I found with each other, in being able to talk about all kinds of stuff, from our sort of shared values and our shared understanding of like, well, what is it that really helps when there's perinatal trauma? How do we do it? And then also, what's the impact on us? Yeah. Like, I love that you and I have been able to just talk about this work.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited that you are. I mean, we've got your trainings registration is open
and ready to go.
You're in. You're there. Yeah, so good.
And getting the opportunity for people to do both the phase 1, which is the introductory foundational training for brain spotting, and then being able to add to that with the phase 2, and then the specialty training that I do really focused on overall perinatal trauma and all the stages and phases that people potentially face trauma, to help identify that, to be able to really deepen understanding and to be able to utilize those brain and body-based tools to be able to intervene in a way that's the most helpful. The congruence is just so lovely that, like you said, between the values and the people who connect with Touchstone, and it's just, you can just feel the energy, and then being able to have those like-minded folks to be able to connect with us through consultation, formally or informally, having people to refer to in different areas, because as much as we are trying to get so many people trained, there's so much more work to do as far as getting people in a place of understanding and more competence with the perinatal community, because we're still hearing of horror stories of people who are coming forward, sharing their truths and not being understood as parents, and creating more ruptures like separations, over medications, etc., because the people don't have the really valuable information to be able to guide someone through that period and know what is the difference between someone who is truly in a dangerous place and someone who is really experiencing, whether it's pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, or postpartum challenges that can be addressed and can be mitigated without all of the most highest end interventions that we can serve people within a community, in support, etc. I mean, obviously we have to assess case by case, but I think people who are not as adept at understanding what happens in the perinatal period will jump ahead. And so being able to really intervene in a one of the things that's so great about the brain and body based is that they can work in such a more expeditious manner. The goal isn't to do it fast.
Right.
It's but to do it well. The pace of the client, but to do it well and to find more complete healing for that individual.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the miracle of the brain spotting and the EMDR, is that once the person is through that area of focus, that target, depending which lens you're looking through, that it's done for them. It's integrated, and they move.
I always talk about being untangled and rewoven. Right.
Completely. And I love your fabric analogy and weaving that tapestry. I love that, that you utilize in your work. And so, feeling more integrated, feeling more calm, feeling like whatever challenges will come next, because that's part of the parenting journey, that I may not know exactly what to do, but I will find my way and I will get through this, and I can
handle it.
I can handle it. I will manage this, and I can rely on what I've built internally.
Right. Well, because the fire is out. Because if the fire is out, I'm not constantly putting out new eruptions of big fire.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about, as you were talking about the trainings we already have and the one you and I are planning, the new one. We're planning to do the training on grief and talking about treatment around bereavement and grief, loss, all kinds of loss through both the brain spotting approach and the EMDR approach. And just thinking about, there are so many places that teach about grieving and bereavement, perinatal or otherwise. And there are other places that teach EMDR and other places that teach brain spotting. And I always want to make sure people know, and I think you know this, Jana, that we're not actually trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to replicate what's already out there. What we're actually trying to do is do it in a way that's different enough that it feels like it adds value to the people who are coming to the trainings. And so some of that is in the culture we're building. Some of that is in the community that we're building. Some of that is in the instructors that we're inviting to teach. And I know that when we do our training on grieving, that it's not going to be like, the bog standard training on grieving, which are good and are necessary. We need to know those nuts and bolts. And there's a nuance that we're really aiming for people. So what I really hope is going to happen is that we're going to see when we do our grief training in the spring, that we're going to have this lovely mixture of brain spotting trained people, EMDR trained people, all perinatal, and then people who have that overlap. And wow, I cannot wait for those conversations.
Me too. Because that's how we learn together and grow together.
Yeah.
And innovate is,
Yes.
So
and
yes,
integrate.
It is the literature, of course. Research is important.
Yeah, it's all research. It's everything we do.
But the practical experience and our clients' experience and the education they provide us, weaving that through, because they're the ones who are living with grief out in the world and interfacing with with communities that really are not very good at grieving and don't really know what to do. And so the more that we are able to get people understanding a lens to look through, and they're actually helpful, and providing the venue for the healing.
And for us.
Yeah.
Right. Also for us as clinicians, I think this is one of the things that's critically important is both the examination of our own stuff, to use a technical term, around loss, grief, trauma, and the impacts that we've all survived. And where are we in our healing? Where are we in our integration? And it's ongoing, even with really good neurobiologically focused treatment. New developmental stages, new issues, new milestones come up, and there's another angle in that just didn't get addressed before because it wasn't accessible before. And so it's not us and them, it's all us. Yeah. And so that's part of why, from my perspective, the community building is essential to create a place where people really are willing to speak up in a training and really ask the question and share an anecdote and talk about their own experiences, because it makes the training so much richer for all of us, including us as the instructors.
Yeah.
It's so much out of that.
The environment where people can do that and to
Yes,
feel
that's
the
what
vulnerability of being able to share those types of things themselves, their families, the clients that they work with, that there's a community that's able to hold that and treat that with this respect and gentleness, and that
trauma-informed instruction.
Yes. Like start to finish.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why I'm so drawn to this, is it is so aligned with values. And I was doing some training on my own before I joined Touchstone, and I just loved how so much of the things that were important to me were important to you guys, but it was even more formalized.
Yeah.
I had tiered pricing, but the Institute has gone into more detail to help people figure out what tier do I fit into, and making that really easy.
Yes.
And really helping with that access, the equity,
That's the
really
idea.
trying to push towards the diversity, and that is shown through instructors, through all the assistants, through who's going to come, because there's so much work that needs to be done in the perinatal world, but particularly in the more marginalized communities and those who have the disparities impacted. And so being able to live that and know that the organization as a whole is so focused, aware, and coming up with different solutions to overcome barriers is just enormous for me.
Absolutely. Well, and something just happened. I haven't even had a chance to tell you. I'm connected now to Michelle Alone, who does brain spotting training here.
Oh, wow.
And I'm wondering about integrating a perinatal piece. So, we're international, you see.
Of course.
So, the idea of being able to bring our knowledge base, not just to North America, but to wherever, kind of wherever they'll have us. Having conversations with perinatal clinicians here who want EMDR training, clinicians who want brain spotting training, and again, who want the perinatal focus. So much so that they'd actually prefer to take it in North America if they could, even though it's probably better for them to take it in their own country.
Right.
So it's lots of excitement. There's lots of excitement, which is cool.
No, I mean, my co-trainer for phase 2, Dr. Robbie Abels, is out of Australia. And so
cool.
She does so much, with that region of the world, and so much rich cultures, etc. I mean, her focus is not as much on the perinatal. That's where I come in, but being able to make those connections and really trying to have such competent care across. I had a different brain spotting trainer recently take my Connecting the Rainbow, healing perinatal trauma training. And she said, I never really thought that I worked with the perinatal community that much, but I'd heard such things. She's like, now I see through this new lens that like, when you think you don't work at the perinatal community, you work with the perinatal community, even if the person has grown children,
right?
Because we see that unhealed trauma is just that. And so there's always an opportunity for healing. It's never too late.
Never too late.
And that if someone experiences that type of rupture without the repair, can assist. And look, everybody has that reproductive story, regardless of whether they have children.
Right. It touches all of us, whether it was our own parent, whether it was a sibling, a friend, whatever, ourselves, spouse. There's just so much. And even when things don't go off track in ways that people would typically define as traumatizing, there are still often ruptures and losses and meaning making that we can support. And so, there's just so many ways that clinicians who even don't specialize in this area could benefit from knowing more.
Completely. And so her eyes were open. So now she's preaching from the rooftops that like, hey,
that's so good.
Work with humans. I really want to
exactly. Well, I like to say, if you ever were a baby, saw a baby, or had a baby, you might be interested in this.
Exactly. And so, the more people that we're able to reach, I think the better. The more understanding that can go out and more compassion. There's always a double-sided coin when it comes to social media, because sometimes you can get really solid information out there that really can be helpful. And then unfortunately, people will send me videos of folks who are talking about perinatal or trauma, and what they're saying doesn't match data or best practices or anything that would be considered like industry standard, but it gets equal airtime. And so just trying to really get out there and help people understand that there are solid resources. Touchstone Institute is absolutely one of them. That they can spread and share.
That they can depend on.
Yes, that's reliable, and it's always evolving. And so that's why it's so great that we have people like you and I who read articles for fun and take trainings to expand on intention.
Yes, we do.
what we've just learned, even in the last decade or two, about trauma as a whole
It's
has
a whole
really
nother field. It's an
changed
entirely
our
different field the
biological
last 30
approaches.
years.
It's a
Yeah.
whole new world. And
Yeah.
so just seeing people still talking in kind of the outdated language or
And
stating,
using top-down methods that are
yes,
just exhausting for people
yes,
and actually don't put out the underlying fire.
correct. And that take an extra long time with extra lot of work because you can't talk yourself out of the trauma.
You cannot.
Talk therapy is wonderful once the trauma is integrated, and you can utilize that in future focus. Yes, of course, nobody works in a vacuum. Some of that is woven into our work,
Mhm.
but having that be the primary source of
Mhm.
to assist in a traumatic situation is just not
Mhm.
going to be as effective as being able to use the brain and
Right.
body based approaches, because what happens in the body happens in the brain, and what happens in the brain happens in the body. And so,
Mhm.
as I know, we know well, even if you don't have a full memory of what you experienced, whether you were too
Yeah.
young to remember, whether you were altered, for whatever reason, whether you were so overwhelmed that your brain, shut down to try to survive, that your body still remembers, and that there is those implicit memories that we're able to help relieve and
Yes.
complete on a brain level. And just the value that comes with that, and how rewarding it is as the clinician to
Yes.
see that process occur and to
Yes.
have that level of such complete and deep healing.
Yeah.
And that's
Exactly.
what we find so invigorating. And that's what keeps
It
us
is. It's very exciting. So
coming
I'm
back.
thrilled. I'm thrilled that we have this now official, formalized connection, and that, it fills me up. It makes me so happy. And I know that people are going to get so much out of training with you, as they have already,
Yeah.
when you were training independently. And
And I just, I love that when people are posting things about, like, I'm considering Mara's EMDR class,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's dozens of people saying, oh, this is a do not miss. Like, this is why, that, well,
that.
your approach and your genuineness and your congruence and just the deep passion for the work comes through everything you do.
Well, thank you. And this is, again, part of where I think our affinity comes from as well, because I see you exactly the same way. I see the same responses to you, the excitement and the you must take it. And it's so wonderful. And I especially love that when we started telling people, hey, Jana Glass is training for Touchstone, the way that people responded was, well, of course. Dream team.
I, I,
Right? Like, of course you two would do that
yes.
together, which gives me chills even just now to
Yeah.
say that. Like, that it seemed so that even from the outside, it's so
Yeah.
clear to people, like, but
I love,
we're twinsies in that
yeah.
way.
Well, and the how we feel internally is
Yes,
showing to
yes,
people who may or
yes.
may not know us both that well.
Right.
It's
But there's
such a
something that
bizarre.
comes through that well, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That would go together. That feels like just an kind of an obvious pairing, and that feels, first of all, absolutely accurate, and just affirming and cool that it's so also clear to people from the outside. And so, like I said, I think that your energy and your passion and your knowledge and experience expands and adds and deepens to what we are working on doing. And one of the things that's really important to me is that we know that we have this faculty that are so connected in these ways with people's own specialization, subspecializations, and knowledge base, and yet the vibe is the same. The energy is the same. The culture that we're building is the same, and that feels very solid to me.
Yeah.
That I know I can say, yeah, I don't need to be concerned about teaching or what's happening in that room, because I know you, right? And I know how you hold a room, and I know how you support people and your level of sensitivity, and that's just priceless.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that you wanted to join us.
and I'm grateful for the opportunity. And so I can't wait to continue to build a team of people, an extended team of people, extended team of
Absolutely.
people, you know, who
Exciting.
make it a safer world to decide to have kids, to birth, to
Yes.
not to decide to not have kids, to decide to support folks with kids, etc., and just continue the work that we hold so dear in a
Yeah.
way that just really honors the entire perinatal experience
Yeah.
and
I see.
brings
Mm-hmm.
brings the priority really centering around the needs of the population, the people who love them, their families, extended families, that's going to be everything.
Absolutely everything. And I think of this work as primary prevention and early intervention, and so fundamental to
Yeah.
making the kinds of changes we want to see in the world.
Yeah.
So
Great.
I'm so glad you're here.
So deeply. I'm so glad to be here and look forward to more amazing things to come that we haven't even thought of yet.
Exactly.